Originate from the Gravitate Co-working Studio, sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company.
Welcome back to another episode of In the Side of the Storm, where we talk all things cyclones. We're coming to you live from the Gravitate Co-working Studios and sponsored by our friends at Revelton Distillery. I'm Dave Larson here with my Storm Team partner, Cyclone great Marcus Pfizer. Marcus, how are you?
Doing well, Dave. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. We're going to jump into things quick, but first I want to do a quick congratulations to Three Beards Media. We held our first STFU event on Saturday at Revelton, raising nearly $1,200 for the Young Women's Resource Center. So congratulations to Three Beards and to Chris. All three Beards podcast hosts were there representing, and we really had a fun time. So again, thank you to Revelton for hosting us on Saturday. Want to welcome in Jamie Pollard. Jamie, Iowa State Athletics Director for the past, you're coming up on 19 years. Is that right?
I'm in my 19th year. Yes. Thanks, David. And good to see you, Marcus.
You as well, Jamie. How's everything going?
It's awesome. You know, when it's a sunny day in Ames, that's good weather in December. You know, you don't look at the thermometer, but if the sun's shining, you're happy.
Right.
And Marcus, how was it where you are today?
I mean, it was, you know, we're getting down in the high 50s, you know, around that, you know, low 50s, high 50s area. But throughout the day, it gets up pretty well. But at nighttime, it gets pretty chilly. You know, the dog don't want to go out for her nightly duties when it gets that low. But she's a little spoiled. But it does get cold here. People think it doesn't get cold here in Vegas, but it really does get cold. It just doesn't snow.
50 degrees sounds like shorts weather to us.
Oh, I have on shorts from time to time too.
All right, Jamie. So you're an Oshkosh, Wisconsin native. Is that correct?
I am. You want to talk cold? Now let's go to Oshkosh and we'll know all about it.
Are you a Packers fan?
I am, and you know they're on right now. They're up 7-0.
Well, we really thank you then for being on tonight, knowing that distraction is out there.
Well, hey, Cyclones come first.
Oh, we agree. We definitely agree on that. So before we get too far down, one thing that I was really appreciative of a couple of years ago, you had your cancer diagnosis and really use your platform to be able to get the word out. And we're coming off of Movember, which is that month where we really recognize and want to promote cancer awareness with us guys. And a lot of times that's something that we don't talk a lot about and take care of it. Where are you with your treatments?
Well, I actually, ironically, I have Thursday my next 6-month scan. So I anticipate it'll go well. It's gone well so far. And I hope, I have no reason to think it won't. So, but I appreciate you saying something about it. You know, it's when you go through it, clearly, there's a different phases of embarrassment and, you don't really want to talk about that. Guys don't do a really good job of that. And somebody I respect in the business who had cancer said, you have a platform, you kind of have a responsibility to say something because you might be able to save somebody else by just creating some awareness. And so when I did do that, it was amazing, the outpouring from people and several people that, called me or texted me or emailed me that said, hey, I'm feeling this, or I think this. And I'm like, go get checked. because early detection is what it's all about. And so I appreciate you saying that, David, because it's not something I probably would have went public with if somebody else wouldn't have encouraged me.
Well, we're certainly glad to hear that. All of Cyclone Nation is glad to hear that. I was one that I grow the ugly mustache every year to help promote it, and wanted to bring that as a topic for tonight. So glad to hear. Good news there. So you were hired by President Joffrey in 2005. What was that process like as you were going through that interview and consideration? Why did you consider Ames and Iowa State?
Well, first of all, I had worked with President Joffrey. He was the provost at the University of Maryland. And so I had been at Maryland as one of the associate ADs. And so we had a familiarity, probably more familiarity of people that knew me that he respected. But we had met and had several exchanges back then. So that part helped. But really it was, I was at a spot where I really wanted to lead my own program. And, I think back to that particular time and many of the things I thought about Iowa State, I still think today, which was, I'm probably better in being a builder than a maintainer. And so I wanted to be someplace where you could actually get your hands on things and try to make a difference. And, you could go to some places where they're going to say, hey, look at all those trophies over there. That's how you do it here. Right. And at Iowa State, people were looking for a little more direction. They kind of knew what they wanted to do, but we didn't really know how to get there. And, I was fortunate that I'd been at a place most recently at Wisconsin that had kind of gone through that and had found its way. And so that was really attractive. And then two, it meant a lot to me with young children to go to a community that would allow me not only to be AD, but also to be dad. And there's a lot of places in this industry where you just would be hard to do that physically because maybe it's an urban area. And, if you lived in the suburbs, you'd have an hour commute and, you don't have an hour anywhere in Ames. I always laugh and say, the one stoplight is the traffic jam going home at night. Right. So, but, you can help coach your kids. You can go to parent teacher conferences. You can be active, you drive your kids to school, and still be in and out of the office. And we use that, that's a big thing, I think, for Coach Campbell and certainly for Coach Otzelberger and some of our other coaches that, you can have both. And that was an important part for me. And then, just the people of the Midwest, there's just something about it here. You look at our attendance in all our sports and the attendance has probably far exceeded what we've done athletically. And yet these people come and support, and that's really neat. And that says a lot about, the Midwest and Ames and Iowa State. So those all were ingredients that made it a really attractive job to me.
So you talked about building, and I wrote down a list in preparation. So on your watch, Cyclones.tv, the Bergstrom Football Complex, the Sukup Basketball Complex. We've enclosed that south end zone and added the Sukup Center and the Sukup end zone, Stark Performance Center, Cyclone Sports Complex, which hosts the track, soccer, and softball, RV parking, which is a huge success, the pedestrian bridge, which everyone raves about. We have everyone else in the Big 12 who's jealous about. Sci-Town is coming to life, and we saw a lot of movement when we returned for football games this fall. I want to ask you about an update on that here soon. The new wrestling center, which was announced, that will be housed out by the basketball facility and taking over the former All Iowa Tech. Of course, you mentioned football fans now averaging 50,000 per year, and I believe this was a year where
60,000 this year.
60,000 sold out every home game.
Didn't sell it every game, but we were close.
Okay, it felt like it when I was attending. That's for sure. Women's basketball historically is in the top 5, top 10 for attendance. Men's, of course, attendance has always been up there. And probably most importantly, graduation rates are in the top of the Big 12 as well. Of those, is there one that you're more proud of than the others?
Oh, great question. I would say a couple things. First of all, obviously the facilities are important because they're going to they're going to be lasting, and they're going to, pay dividends well beyond, any one person's tenure. And we were sorely in need of a facility overhaul. And those are tough major projects because there isn't any state funding. So you have to lean into the donors and the fan base to be able to do that. But I would say the biggest thing is kind of just created a culture of success. And there was a little bit of and I'm going to pick on them. I'm a Milwaukee Brewers fan, but I'm going to pick on the Cubs, the lovable losers. And there was just like, it was okay to just try. And I remember my first year, 2005, we played in the Houston Bowl against TCU. And we had the Alumni Association had a big party after the game, and it was New Year's Eve. And we lost. And I was in a bad mood because we lost, and people were like, what are you in a bad mood for? Like, let's go have an alumni party. And I'm like, no, because we lost, and it's not okay, and I've maybe kind of tamed that with age a little bit. You mature, but it's just that element of, I think we've just created this culture from top to bottom, whether it's academics, whether it's facilities, whether it's character, or whether it's what you do on the field or, on the court, is let's be our best, and if you think about it, the 450 young men and young women that make up our teams, for the most part, they're all alphas, right? They're all really good at what they do. They know how to work hard. They're competitive. And so creating a culture where it's okay to try to be like, it's okay to say, I want to go do this. You can say it in a modest way, but let's set our goals high and let's go try to do it. And I that's probably what I'm most proud of, is I think we've just created a culture that we're about more than just football and basketball. We're about all 18 sports. We're about all 450 athletes, and we're about trying to excel. And, what's really neat is, we have this platform called sports that is a great life lesson, and you don't always learn the most from winning. Sometimes you learn a lot from losing. And being able to use that platform to, create a culture that is pretty special from top to bottom, whether it's our student athletes, our coaches, or our fans, and even maybe the institution. I think back in 2005, I'm not certain the institution really, I'm not going to say they didn't care, but it wasn't a priority to be good in athletics. And I would say now it's a priority on our campus to be good in athletics.
So we're coming off of two great in-state basketball games last weekend. Where are we at? Where do you think sit with the Cyhawk series?
Well, we were trying to become the first school to win it 3 years in a row. So no one has done that yet. And quite frankly, we've made our life a little hard here. We're not out of it. We got to win the last three sports. So we've got gymnastics, tennis, and softball left. And we have to win all three to win it. You have to get to 13. And right now it's 11 to 8. So we've got to win the last three. Now, can we? Yes. Will we? Hey, if it was simple, somebody'd already be doing it. But, we beat them in softball last year. We beat them in tennis last year. We did not beat them in gymnastics last year, but we have beaten them regularly. So it's doable, but we made life a little harder. But last week was awesome. We had 4 straight nights of sellouts between the wrestling meet, the women's basketball game, the men's basketball game. And then I don't know if you can call it a sellout at swimming because we don't sell tickets, but it was a standout because it was standing room only in Bayer. And I've never seen that many people at a swim meet before.
Wow. Marcus, they didn't have Cyhawk series when you were playing, did they?
I don't remember.
I think it was like the year before I started is when they had it for football. They had the trophy, but we didn't have it where all the sports contributed to it until I think 2004.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. Love to have been a part of that.
Well, if we had it when you played, we would have, basketball would have been a layup.
No, it wasn't that easy. It definitely wasn't that easy. No one ever really sweeps in basketball or whatever the sports is. The state is just a tough go, no matter what. Yes. It's such a huge rivalry game for each university, and so people don't understand. Like some of the years I would have rather faced Kansas and Texas than facing Drake. It's just
Right.
it's just a boxing match from the start of the game to the end. So, but it is always great to be a part of that, and nowadays to talk about the memories and stuff like that. So, yeah, it would have been fun to be a part of that.
And as players, you probably were talking smack with one another. Do the athletic directors talk smack back and forth or send emails back and forth?
Not really. It depends. Different personalities. Depends who the AD is.
So just before we jumped on, we made reference about the Liberty Bowl coming up. How are bowl preparations coming along?
Good. I mean, Memphis. One of the great things about Memphis is it's easy to get to, but B, it's a place where people can congregate as a big group of Cyclone fans down on Beale Street. And so they do the parade. You've got the places to be, the night before the game. And that to me is what makes a bowl exciting. We've gone to Orlando 2 out of the last 4 years, and Orlando's a great place to go. Don't get me wrong. And you can wear t-shirts to the game. In Memphis, you won't be able to wear t-shirts to the game. But, the problem in Orlando is it gets so spread out because everybody's off going theme parks, doing all this other stuff. And you don't get that feel of, well, we're all together. I think back to like the Alamo Bowl several years ago. And I mean, that was a hoot because we're all down on the river walk, and it's like a 3-day tailgate. So Memphis has that environment. I think it's the weather hurts it a little, and we're playing Memphis again, so we're not playing an SEC team. So our sales right now are about what we did 2 years ago for our last appearance in a bowl game when we were at the Cheez-It Bowl down in Orlando. And what I remember about that is it looked really good, and it looked like Cyclones had really come out to support. But we're running behind what we did in 2017, where we sold tickets to Memphis like we were selling pancakes. I mean, they were like flying out of here like hotcakes, and it isn't that as robust as it was in 17.
And if I can make any call out for Cyclone fans, make sure you're buying your tickets because the Memphis fans will be there. And the last time that we played Memphis, that stadium was half Cardinal, half blue. And it was a great sight. The stadium was filled. Everyone was going nuts. And you're right. Beale Street is a ton of excitement, a lot of fun for all the fans to be able to go to. All the bars are open, restaurants. You can just walk down Beale Street and basically stand in one spot, listen to some music, walk about 5 steps and hear another band playing. It really is a lot of fun.
Well, it is. And, it's quite frankly, it's an easy trip because you can drive. It's affordable as these things go. I mean, the hotels are very reasonable in the Memphis area. The ticket prices are decent. I get it that the weather can be iffy, but you know what, that week, the way it sets up, I mean, if somebody decides on December 26th, hey, the weather looks great for the 29th, let's jump in a car, you can do that. If we were playing in Arizona or Orlando over Christmas, you might not be able to do that because it'd be really costly plane tickets. And so I still think we'll get a good crowd, and those that go will have a good time, I guarantee you.
Now, are there any pregame plans like we've had in the past?
So what unofficially, anybody that's in on Wednesday the 27th, they can come join me at Silky O'Sullivan's down on Beale Street. That's my favorite hangout, and it's a legendary place to go on Beale. But the official events start on Thursday the 28th. We will have a pep rally in the minor league ballpark there, which is about 2 blocks off of Beale Street. I believe the doors open at 10:30. I think the pep rally's at 11:30. Then Beale Street Parade will be at 2:00, which is a don't miss. Both years that we were there in 2012 and 2017, Cyclone fans took over Beale Street. And it was really fun. We just put in an order for 1,000 little Nerf footballs that are Cyclone balls that we'll be throwing out of the convertible into the crowd along Beale Street. So kids will love that, and I'm sure some adults will too. And then after the parade, then there is another kind of band pep rally where the bands kind of compete against each other that the bowl puts on. I think that's like at 4:00. And then Thursday night, is just have fun on Beale Street, and then Friday, for those that want a pregame tailgate, the bowl puts on a really neat indoor tailgate at the stadium, and it's all you can eat and all you can drink for $50, and it's indoors with live music. Plus our marching band and cheerleaders will be there. And then the game's at 2:30. So it sets up really well to have about a 48-hour period of time that is, cyclone fun.
Well, all 3 days are really going to be cyclone fun. I encourage everyone to try to get down there and attend. I'm sure the weather's might be a little bit chilly, a little bit jacket, but you face worse in Jack Trice Stadium. I can guarantee you that. So let's take a quick time out here. And
this year, ask.
Go ahead, Jamie.
No, I'm good. Take the time out.
All right, we're going to take a quick time out here from our sponsor, Revelton Distillery.
Why take the best corn in the world and make it into fuel when you could make it into whiskey? That's the question that launched Revelton, Iowa's most visible and fastest growing distillery. Owners Rob and Christy Taylor embrace the grain-to-glass philosophy, sourcing ingredients locally and overseeing on-premises production and bottling at their facility in Osceola. One sip and you'll agree that Revelton's handcrafted whiskeys, gins, and vodkas are the best you've ever tasted. And with the launch of their rye whiskey, made with 100% Iowa-grown rye and corn, and their new bourbon coming soon, there's more Revelton to love than ever. Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com. The great thing about working from home is working from home. The worst thing is working from home, especially for face-to-face collaborations with customers and coworkers. And let's face it, coffee shop meetings are neither private nor professional. So skip the trip to Starbs and investigate Gravitate Co-working Space. For more than 10 years, Gravitate has provided large and small office and conference spaces perfect for hosting meetings, workshops, or other events, as well as private phone booths for confidential conversations. Plus, all spaces include secure fiber internet, free coffee, and access to a kitchenette. All you need is your laptop. Gravitate does the rest. And renting space at Gravitate is surprisingly affordable. An hour of office space costs about the same as venti caramel macchiatos and breakfast sandwiches for two. Daily and monthly rates are also available with no long-term commitment. Learn more at gravitatecoworking.com. That's gravitatecoworking.com.
All right, thanks to Gravitate and to Revelton Distillery. Hey, Marcus, when you were at Iowa State, we were in the conference looked a lot different than what it's going to look like in 2024. What are both of your thoughts on this new Big 12? And I'm not sorry to see certain teams leave. That's fine. Jamie, I think we've heard how you feel about some of those teams, one in particular. But share your thoughts on the new Big 12, and are we going to have a name change there?
Well, me or Jamie?
Let's start with you, Marcus.
Well, it's going to be exciting, without a doubt. I prefer to see the conference grow, get bigger, to expand the fan base and everything like that. A lot of people don't understand how tough the Big 12 is as a conference already. So to continue to be one of those teams and one of those universities that gets a lot more recognition, we're becoming a lot better nationally in pretty much all of our sports. So it's always a great thing, me out here in Vegas always wearing, my paraphernalia, ISU stuff. I see a lot of, alumni and stuff out here running into them in the grocery stores and things like that, So there's always fun to be able to represent in that nature and to be able to have schools out here now, Arizona State and Utah, schools that are closer to me here in Las Vegas. So, I don't get to come back to Ames as much as I would like to. So being able to, go to different sports events in those areas, it's going to be a lot of fun.
And Jamie, we have 16 teams in the conference next year.
We will. And, Marcus, the basketball league is going to be, a gauntlet.
I know. I love it.
I was looking at the net this morning, and we have, I think we're 2, 3, 5, 7, 10. And if we counted Arizona, we would be 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10. So our basketball league is unbelievable, and it's going to get even harder with those schools coming on board.
Mhm.
But I'm excited about it because I think for fans, it's going to be a fresh approach. I'm even looking, they haven't set the football schedule for next year, but that we know who we're going to play. And, there's new faces, there's new destinations. It was fun this year. Tell you what, like going to Cincinnati and going to BYU, that was really enjoyable. I mean, BYU was amazing and might have been one of the best environments I can recall being in before. So I think that's neat for not only our fans, but for our student athletes too.
Well, wasn't it BYU that delivered cookies during the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter, to fans in the stands? Did I read that correct?
They do ice cream in the third quarter to the visiting fans, and then they did brownies because it was really cold the night we were there, so they didn't do the ice cream. They did brownies, but that's what they typically do is they do ice cream from their creamery and deliver them up into the stands for the visiting section. And so it was a really neat environment. So, but it's going to be fun to go to Arizona State, Utah, Colorado again, back like the old days.
Yeah.
I know Brent's not on here tonight, but I think that video at the beginning is him running for the touchdown in the tornado game where he looked up on the video board to see if somebody was chasing him down.
Yeah, back when the video board was much, much smaller than it is today.
Yeah, he had to have good eyesight to see if somebody was coming on that video board.
What does the future hold for the Big 12 Conference?
Well, it's I would say this. We're as well positioned as we could have ever expected or hoped, given what happened with all the realignment. What happens to our industry on a go-forward basis is probably anybody's guess at this point. And, there's days that you look to the future and you just shake your head and go, what's going to be like for any of us? That being said, what I would tell you, David, is, in my 19 years, there were multiple times the obituary was written for the Big 12. And we're like a cat with multiple lives. But what was really fun this past year was, we weren't the hunted, we were the hunter. And that was a different perspective because we had always been the hunted and we were doing the hunting. And I can't say I enjoyed it because I know what it's like to be hunted, but it was a little more of a relief to know, like, we're good. It's just, are we going to even get better by picking up some other schools? And we know in hindsight we did.
Are we done with realignment or are we just on pause?
I think we're on pause. I mean, but I'd also say, if you just look historically, there's been realignment in college athletics forever. I mean, go back to the formation of the Big 8 from the Southwest Conference and the Big 8 to get to the Big 12, right? I mean, people don't, if they haven't been following this for a long time, don't know that South Carolina used to be in the ACC, right? Penn State was independent, so there's always been realignment. I think what's changed is one, because of the way television is set up, geography doesn't matter as much. And we saw that play out big time with the Pac-12. And number two is because of social media and all these other platforms, we just know so much more about it and we debate it and we, overthink it. Where back in the day, you didn't even know it was happening and then it happened and they wrote a story about it, right? Now you get wind that it's going to happen and then it's debated for weeks on end on social media. And so it just seems more toxic, I guess, in today's world. But the geography piece has really changed. I mean, California schools going to the East Coast. I mean, it makes no sense at all.
So, that you've got a rabid fan base in the Cyclones. And, Marcus, you've heard us up in the stands yelling and screaming during the middle of games and pretty much shaking Hilton Coliseum to the core. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I think endears you to Cyclone fans, Jamie, is your passion for our programs. What does that process look like when there is a mistake that's made and do you as the athletic director then reach out on behalf of the university? Is that the coach that does that? You don't have to use any specific examples or you may want to, but I'm curious what that process looks like when there is a call that doesn't go our way, and we've seen several of those over the years. What does that process look like from your perspective?
Well, again, I think you mature over time, right? And how you react to some of that has, for me at least, it's clearly changed. I think early on, the fight in you comes out, right? And then you learn that, for the most degree, when you complain about something that you can't change, you end up not really liking the fact that you complained about it. And there's other ways to, honey and sugar gets things done a lot more than, vinegar, right? And so, but I do think that you need to make sure things are accountable, and, we strive for improvement, right? We had a call in the Kansas game where clearly, our kick returner didn't step out of bounds. And in hindsight, we can look back on that and say, losing that game, if we win that game, we would have won the tiebreaker and would have been in the Big 12 championship game. Now, we didn't know at that moment that one call potentially had that kind of ramification. And so in my old days, I would have been just irate, right? Because he clearly didn't step out. But really how Coach Campbell and I dealt with it that night was just talking to the Big 12 about, I hope that they're talking to that official and asking him, like, what did you see? Why did you call what you did? Right? Now, if he says I saw him step out, then I got a problem because he didn't step out. But if he says, well, I thought he was stepped out. Okay, we're all human. It's a split-second decision. And then you show him the video and he can see he's wrong. And then, then you just kind of use it as a teaching moment to say, well, that call can't be reversed. It can't be reviewed. So unless absolutely he stepped out, you don't make that call, because the replay can save you if you're wrong. Right. But if you call him out, it's over. Right. And so if you didn't see him out, it better be definitive. To me, that's the teaching moment, right? And so that's what we talked about on Saturday, because, grousing that it was the wrong call wasn't going to change the game. But hopefully using it as a teaching moment changes something in the future for the better. And that's how I try to approach it now.
Well, and then when I saw Jalen Noel running down the sidelines against Kansas State with the exact same situation, I got real nervous.
You and I too. You and I both.
Well, and at this point, don't you just let everyone on Twitter explode and let the Big 12 hear from the fan base?
Well, yeah, and what we all have to remember, and I've done this before at the Big 12 tournament. Go to the Big 12 tournament, go to a game we're not playing in, go sit in another school's section, and listen to their fans grouse about the basketball officiating, and you'll go, "What are they complaining about? That was a good call," right? But so we all see it through, our colored glasses, right? So Cyclone fans see it through rose or cardinal or, yellow colored glasses, and it's always a bad call. And more often than not, they're not. We let emotion get into it, but sometimes, they're human. They're not going to get them all right. They just aren't. Nor would want all three of us.
Well, I would love to have been a fly on the wall, Marcus, in March of 2000 when a certain game was played in Auburn Hills.
You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have. I don't think we were prepared for that.
No, things changed though. So,
well, I saw an interview with Larry recently, and it was fascinating, his retrospect on his time at Iowa State and his career. And one of the things, not specifically that situation, but just in general, right? He said something that I just, I could say the same thing about myself, which was, he said when he first got to Ames, he didn't know it. He can now look at it in hindsight and say he wasn't mature enough yet for the situation. He'd never been in that kind of environment. And he said, I didn't handle things maturely. And, that I can look back on it now and go, I just wasn't prepared for the stage I had, got hired into. Right. And he had to kind of grow into that. And, unfortunately in his case, he paid a dear price to grow, as a human being. But I thought it was just really fascinating to hear him talk about it in hindsight. Not that particular moment, because he was probably right in that particular moment. But
He's 100% right in that moment.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a great interview. I think Chris Williams and Brent Bloom had
yes,
one just before the Thanksgiving holiday, and it was
yes,
great to hear from Larry. And Marcus, I think you probably hear from him a little bit more often than the rest of us. But it was enjoyable to hear just Larry's appreciation for the university and for he recognizes what happened, and and really it's helped him become the person that he is today by going
right,
through that experience.
right. Well, the other neat thing about that too was, their son coached in one of our against
Yeah.
us in one of the early season games, and Stacy was at the game, and she wrote me and just said how emotional it was for her to see her son back on the sidelines in Hilton Coliseum when he was a little
Yeah.
rug rat, probably running around at practice when you were playing.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we communicate a lot often. For the last 3 or 4 years, he's been recruiting Marcus Jr. a lot. So, he has my cell phone number. Coach Stacy has my cell phone number. So we communicated a lot. And I forgot that we were actually going to be playing them early this year. And once the game was on, I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool to, for him now to be an adult. Things are a little bit different than it was when he was, getting chased out of there by Larry and everyone else.
So Sidetown, big project that's coming up, building itself up between Hilton Coliseum and Jack Trice. Any updates on Sidetown?
Well, it's like our little Vegas, Marcus, right? That's what we're trying to build out there.
Tell me more about it. I hadn't heard much about it.
So, really, it's a university project that President Winterstein put athletics in charge of, in large part because, we're just structured a little different in our unit of being a little more entrepreneurial. And we're basically taking the land between Hilton and Jack Trice Stadium and getting all the parking lots and everything finally redone. They were, there were crevices out there that you could fall in and be lost in. So that was a major undertaking. But in that process of redesigning the parking lots and repaving them and redoing them, which is a $40 million project, was taking a portion of those parking lots and repurposing them to create, for lack of better terms, an entertainment district that would generate, through land leases and property taxes, generate a new revenue stream that could be used to, one, fund the parking lot improvements that were sorely needed, but two, and more importantly, be a source of funding for rejuvenation of C.Y. Stevens, Fisher Auditorium, Sheeman, and Hilton, because those were just major, awesome facilities that were built half a century ago that are in major forms of either disrepair or obsolete. And so they need an infusion of money. And unfortunately, there's not going to be any money from the state. And so you look and go, where are you going to get the money from? And so Sidetown is a project to try to generate the incremental revenue to try to replenish those facilities. And then along the way, create a really vibrant space between Jack Trice Stadium and Hilton Coliseum that not only can our fans use on game days, but that the community in Central Iowa would want to come to, whether you want to go to dinner or you want to go shopping or you want to live or you want to stay in a hotel. And, the first building that's being built, which we've done the lease with, that'll break ground next spring, is an 80,000 square foot medical facility, which will house all the physical therapy, occupational therapy, urgent care, but all our student athletes will be then treated right there instead of having to go over to the hospital for any kind of x-rays, MRIs, orthopedic care. So the project right now is probably about 2/3 of the way through the infrastructure. So half of the parking lots are done. And they started about 2 weeks ago on the second half of the parking lots because the weather, surprisingly enough, has been so great here right now that they could continue to work here in the month of December.
And this is not a simple resurface job either. You're building it up
Yes.
to anticipation of flood levels by what, 5-8 feet?
At its peak, 7 feet. So basically, all the lots had to be torn out. Then we dig down and we are putting in all kinds of infrastructure so that eventually you can build on it. So stormwater, sewer, electrical, everything that's got to go under the ground. Then they're coming back in and putting in about 7 feet of fill to bring it up over the 500-year floodplain level, and then build the parking lots on top of that. So major undertaking, but a long overdue.
So you talked, Jamie, about one half of the parking lot was worked on just before this football season. The other half should be done by the time we return in the fall. Any other items that should be checked off that list by then, or even what's 2025 season look like?
Well, by the start of fall next year, by football, both sides of the parking lots will be done. The McFarland building should be, I will call it, starting to look like an erector set. I would guess their steel would be in, and they would be starting to erect the frame of the building. And then on the north end, hopefully, depending on how some fundraising goes here in the near future, the beginning of the amphitheater that we're trying to create on the north end, which is an outdoor amphitheater that can host from game watches to pep rallies to concerts.
We're excited for that to take shape. So, you'd made reference about the athletic department and the entrepreneurship that takes place. There's a lot of ideas that seem to float through the department. And, I want to say a lot of that comes from you, but I know that there's a team involved. What's that process look like when you look at major infrastructure changes like this, or you're going to bowl in the end zone, or change vendors, back to Coke hopefully someday, but how are those decisions made in terms of the ideation, and where are we going to place our priorities?
Well, let me first start with maybe just a little bit of level set. Is, in 2005 we had 50 employees and a budget of about $22 million. So we had 50 full-time employees, and today we have about 260 full-time employees and a budget of $110 million. So, our workforce is significantly increased, and there's a lot of really good and talented people in that 260. And, I get the joy and the excitement of being, quote, the leader of the leaders, but we've got an amazing team. And, in a lot of those projects that you're talking about, it starts with, our leadership team. Our CFO, Chris Jorgensen, does an amazing job. He's a CPA, was a manager of a major accounting firm. We've got a great marketing team. I mean, Mary Pink's been with us for a long time, leading our marketing efforts. Tyler Rutherford, who does all our digital media. John Walters, who's been with us, and Eric Heff on a long time on, and so there's a collection of really just talented people that are all part of it. And it takes teamwork. And, our facilities crew, all of our facility staff, from our electricians to our plumbers to our, all the people behind the scenes that nobody will ever know their names, but without them, we'd never, be who we are. So, when you have ideas like that, it usually didn't come from one person. It's usually something that was born out of discussions among a lot of our team members. And, and then we put together groups of people to try to make things happen.
So do you have carte blanche ability to go in and make some of these changes? I assume some things have to go through the Board of Regents, and perhaps some things have to go through a review board within the university.
Absolutely. So the ideas may start in athletics, but they ultimately have to work up their way through the appropriate channels on campus. And then eventually, because they undoubtedly require spending money, that you have to get approval to spend your own money. We get no dollars from the state, no dollars from the university. Everything we do in that $100 million budget is self-generated on an annual basis, but we still have to get approval to spend our own money from the board, and we have to follow the Board of Regents policies and procedures. And so that process, you have to just, you have to build it in and bake it into any of your ideas, because most things you can't, get the idea tonight and implement it tomorrow, because there's going to be a process that you've got to go through. But I also would say we've had a great leadership team that's been in place, for the bulk of at least my time, that you earn credibility because of how you go about doing things. And we've been able to complete what we said we were going to do and have done it the way we said we were going to do it. And that builds trust. And so we get probably a little more leeway from the leadership teams and from both the university and the regents, because they trust us. And that's probably another reason that we were given Sci-Town, because I think they feel confident that we'll get it done.
So what's the next big ticket item or the big picture item that you have after Sci-Town?
Well, you mentioned a couple things that are in the works right now. The wrestling project is a big one. That's a $20 million project that we're just, about half the way through the fundraising efforts and have made great progress there. And we'll actually take it to the Regents this spring. We're in the middle of building a new tennis facility for our tennis team. When the tennis team vacates their current facility, then volleyball will move into that. So volleyball will be out there by wrestling and basketball. Sheeman will start this spring, where we'll be repurposing the whole second level of Sheeman and actually moving Johnny's from inside Hilton over to Sheeman, because it's about 3 times the space. Now, the Coach Orr statue will stay in Hilton, but Johnny's itself will be what the whole second level of Sheeman will be branded. And that'll be the gathering place, and it will be connected indoors to Hilton Coliseum. So you can, put your coat in Sheeman and then walk inside to get into Hilton. But ultimately, the next real big one, is we've got to find a way to refurbish Hilton. And, I would have liked to have thought we'd already started it, but part of what happened with the television industry and realignment kind of put the brakes on that project because of some of the funding changes at the conference level. So we're now trying to either fundraise for that project or waiting to money can come from the residuals off of Sci-Town. But, we have a really neat plan for what needs to be done at Hilton. And I really, I hope we can start that sooner than later.
We talked before about all of the projects that you've been a part of during your tenure at Iowa State. Are there any projects that you still wish that maybe you could have a do-over on, or ones that maybe you dropped, because not necessarily dropped, but you wish that you could go back and revisit or look at again, because at that time it did make sense economically or within the structure of the athletics department?
Well, I'll answer that 2 ways. First of all, yeah, ideally you would have liked to have had the basketball practice facility, the wrestling practice facility, what will soon become the volleyball practice facility, all to be right there by Hilton or Jack Trice, because everybody would be right there in one place. But I also would say we wouldn't be having the success we're having in basketball. The successes that we've had in those sports, that they needed their practice facility, and we just couldn't do it on campus as efficiently and as cost effectively as we were able to do it off campus with some donors' help. So having it kind of trumped it, which made us get a little more decentralized, which, I would prefer we weren't, but we are. And so you just have to deal with it. So that's part of why putting wrestling out there on the west side by basketball and volleyball creates a little more centralization, even though we'll still be somewhat decentralized. It won't be everybody is kind of decentralized. There'll just be kind of 2 areas. So that's probably the one that I would say I think about. I thought you were going to say, what's your favorite one of all of them? And what I would say is the Stark Performance Center, which we opened 2.5 years ago, which is the new dining hall, academic center that's right there by the Jacobson building and the football complex. That has been a game changer for our 450 student athletes. And to watch all of our athletes eat together for breakfast and dinner every single day, including the walk-ons, and to watch teams interact with one another, because they get so siloed. If you're a basketball player, your world of practice class, weight training, is so siloed just with your teammates that you don't get a chance to spend a lot of time with any of the other athletes, right? And you could say that almost by every sport. But the one thing they do together is they all eat together. And so we have that academic facility that's on the third floor, and then we have the dining hall on the top floor. And, I get it. This is great video right now, the academic center. But by and large, you don't go to the academic center to, be talking with your teammates. You're there to study. But when you go upstairs to the dining hall, there's a great picture of the dining hall. That's when you just see all the student athletes interacting with one another. And I love it. I love seeing it. And that's one of the biggest feedbacks we get from our current student athletes.
Hey, Marcus, share the comparison of what it was like when you went to school. You made reference about having practices split up between Bayer and Hilton and living in Larch. Share your experience compared to today's student.
It wasn't that. I mean, we had training table that was, far and few in between in terms of the variety of food that they had for us available. Majority of the time we used to get kicked out of the regular cafeteria because that food was tastier to us than the training table. So us as basketball players, and I know a lot of the football players were in Larch at the time, we normally would eat with them a lot, typically go at the same time. But in order to interact more with other, student athletes and things like that, some of the ones that weren't at training table or maybe didn't even have it, that had to eat at the regular cafeteria, we will, have a lot of fun and try to sneak down there, to have lunch, with them and dinner with them and things like that. And that's when we had the most fun. We didn't see a lot of the other, student athletes, the other sports and things like that. And just watching that video, I was just saying to myself, like, how big of a difference that would have been, being able to go to the other sports games and things like that and showing the other, your friends and other student athletes that you are supporting them and things like that, would have been great to have had that. And I'm sure the guys and gals are really enjoying it now. And man, I was just looking at the video and I was, it gave me a good feeling to imagine having those type of things and how much easier it is for a student athlete now in today's game than it was for us back then. But I mean, it was over 20 years ago. For us at that moment, it was a great situation in terms of what other universities may or may not have. There's no way we were able to look, from 97, 98, 99, 2000 until 2023 and think that it was going to be, this phenomenal. But, as technology, persists and things get better and better, we've gotten better as a university, top to bottom with the sports. You figure things like that are eventually going to come. And, I'm proud to be able to see, and hopefully I'll be able to get back and, go through it and just take it all in and see the difference and the changes that's going on there now.
Well, Marcus, part of it, of what we're seeing today, is due to the successes that the programs that, that you were a part of. Absolutely. And Brent was a part of, that helped to build what we're seeing today as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's definitely an honor. I mean, for me, most of it was just that, I wanted to be a part of something. Again, that was over 20 years ago. So you didn't see, the what was going to transpire into, but I just wanted to be, a part of something right then and that moment, to be able to compete. One of the biggest moments that I remember in my career, I want to talk about Iowa and all those different wins, whatever. It was beating Kansas my sophomore year at the end of the year, at home. Like, that was such a huge moment. It wasn't a blowout game. It was, I didn't have 50 points or anything like that. It was just a solid win. And it's one of those, pictures that's probably still up somewhere around the Hilton or, online, me dunking against Kansas. But that picture right there, that moment right there is so big in my memory because, we weren't never, considered in the Big 8 and moving to the Big 12 to be like that powerhouse basketball program, and to be able to change that, or to be able to be a part of what the guys that helped change that was huge. And then, my junior year, adding Contrail Horton and, Jamal Tinsley and some of the other guys, we just, it was really, really fun. I remember being, Kansas that year, and Roy, Coach Roy Williams was trying to say something to me, and I literally wasn't paying attention to him, because my whole, thought process was just the fact of, being able to feel like, yeah, we're there. We can do that. And we've just, continued to build on it from since then.
So some of the
that's the whole picture.
Some of the new sports that we're adding, Jamie, lacrosse and beach volleyball. Are we adding both, or one of the two?
No, we are not. Those are sports that some of our new members, especially the West Coast schools, have. So the Big 12 will sponsor a championship in those. But, we have our challenges taking care of the 18 sports we currently have. So we're not looking to unfortunately add right now. But I have to say, I love hearing Marcus talk about that time period and the impact that Marcus and his teammates had on today. They just didn't know they were going to have that impact at that particular time. And likewise, the student athletes today are going to have an impact on those in 2030 and 2040. But, I love hearing the stories about that era, because you guys had such an amazing run, and had, just people still talk about that as some of their fondest Cyclone memories. And so it's great to have you in person on here talking about that. So thank you for what you did to provide me an opportunity to be athletics director. I always talk about it as this is like a big relay race, right? And everybody along the way had to carry the baton at some point in time and do their job. Mm-hmm. And you did more than your job, because you're a legend.
I appreciate that. And like we say, just during my time after, just growing up, becoming a man, having a family and everything, now being able to watch the guys that came behind me, Melvin, Elgin, to, Royce White, to Monte, and the rest of those guys, just being able to be a fan now, to be a fan and watch how things have transpired, how much focus we went into being those championship teams, because we knew we were always going to be considered the underdogs. And so we focused a little bit different than, other teams perhaps have to focus. Like every single year we go down to the Big 12 tournament, I'm like, of course I'm going to be biased, but there's nothing in my mind other than the fact that this is a home game and we're going to pull this through. And we've had some amazing moments down there that, no one gave us a shot to winning those games, winning those tournaments. And it's, man, my head just be banging at the end of the games, because I'm just so excited to be a part of it as a fan now.
Jamie, can I ask you a quick question about beer? Not in the stadium. I don't want to ask that. What's your favorite Cyclone NIL beer?
Well, Ames Lager is the Cyclone NIL beer. So that there is only one of those, and it's Ames Lager by Westo. So there can only be one answer to that. That's the NIL beer. There are some other branded Iowa State beers through the university, but the NIL beer is Westo's Ames Lager.
That's a good differentiation right there, is which one goes back to the supporting the athletics department.
Well, they all support the athletics department, but the Ames Lager supports the NIL efforts of our student athletes.
Okay.
Jamie, I want to ask you a quick question. Brock Purdy is tearing the league up in the NFL.
MVP.
The last month in the NBA, the story has been Tyrese Halliburton. I think both of them are serious favorites to win MVPs of both their leagues. And last night, Tyrese had such kind words to say about Brock. Just talk a little bit about those guys and what the guys that have moved on mean to the university. Brees is, killing it, and Allen and those guys. Just speak a little bit about how that makes you feel to see those guys succeed and how they talk about each other and the university.
Well, it's just a really special time, and I don't think we should take it for granted. It's a very unique time. I mean, no school has ever had It's never had where the MVP of the NBA and MVP of the NFL have been from the same school. Now, there's a lot that have to happen for that to happen, but it's it's a possibility that could happen. And you could have probably given people 100 guesses and they wouldn't have said, well, they both be Iowa State grads, right? So, but they're both really classy individuals that have great character and both came from families that really taught them well early on in their lives, and they've carried it over into how they conduct what they do. But they're just two of them. There are a multitude of former athletes right now that are out there, in whether it's the NBA, NFL, over in Europe, and we might be at an all-time high of having athletes at that level at the same time. And I just don't want to take it for granted. It makes me feel really proud. I feel like, at least in my case, because the ones that are there today are all athletes since I've been AD. So I feel like they're my children. And, in Tyrese's case, he went to the same high school as me. And I went to high school with Tyrese's mother's brother. So, and both of them sat on the couch in my office with their parents on their recruiting visits. And I remember it like yesterday, and Marcus, knowing your background as a pastor, one of the great stories on Brock's visit was his dad noticed I had a Jesus Calling book on my desk and said, Brock, you want to play at a school that allows their AD to have a Jesus Calling book on his desk. And it's things like that that just I remember, because it spoke to who they were as people, right? And so to hear Tyrese say the really neat things last night, and how he and Brock did a book reading book group together with Coach Campbell. I mean, that's our culture. And I don't think that happens at a lot of schools.
And I'd be willing to bet, I think we all know what book that is, that they were probably reading together as well.
Well, I don't know.
Cherry water.
Yeah. Matt's had several really good ones. Yep. He's had several good ones that they've done, but I think that's what the book was at that point in time.
Well, thank you for helping to close the deal with Tyrese Halliburton's recruiting to Iowa State University.
Well,
we appreciate that.
I kid Tyrese and say, given that we both went to high school, the same high school, I did all the work. I showed him the way. Now, funny story about that though. I have a key, on my desk at the office. They gave me a key to the city of Oshkosh, when I was back sometime. And
so you've got that over Tyrese at this point.
I do. And to this day, because on Tyrese's visit, he's like, I showed it to him and he's like, well, what does that get you? And there's a custard stand in Oshkosh that's famous. I said, you get free frozen custard. And he was just like, really? And I'm like, well, not really, but sounded good, right? So when he signed his new max deal of $240 million, I sent him a little selfie with me holding the key. And I said, that's pretty cool that you just signed a $240 million deal, but just so you know, the key's not for sale.
He should be getting his own here soon.
Yeah, he should be.
I agree. Well, one last question that I have, then I want to respect your time. And Jamie, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm a fanboy, if you couldn't tell. And I'll rave all day about your efforts and things that you've done within the athletic department, and truly hope that you have a lifetime contract with the university, because I want to see you stay as long as possible. You've made a significant difference in the lives of Iowans in that university, and I want to thank you personally for all that. Of Iowa State's primary colors, which one do you have the most of in your closet? Do you have more cardinal, gold, or black?
Well, black's not a primary color. Some have accused us of that. It's so cardinal is the answer, but I have to say I probably have more black clothing that I like. And I think it kind of just goes back to, I'm a guy, right? So I'm got a little Johnny Cash in me, and it's just if you could tell me go get dressed because we're gonna go out tonight, I'm wearing black jeans and probably some kind of black shirt, just because that's how I feel most comfortable, right? And but if you were to go through my closet, it's tough to have gold colored things as a guy, a lot of it. And because, our friends over on the other side of the state too are, I can pull off the black, but if I wear gold, sometimes it's a little too close to Hawkeye gold. So, but hey, I'm sporting the Ames tonight.
That's a beautiful sweatshirt, I tell you. Marcus, any last
this year
from you?
Say again?
Any last words from you?
Well, yeah, I had a question. I wasn't able to get back for the 100 Jack Trice game. And so, with it being a great success and everything like that, is there going to be any kind of like commemorative sales of jerseys or parts of the grass or footballs or anything like that that's available for, guys like me that's way out here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and didn't get the chance to come back to the game?
Well, there was a big push with the 5-bar logo. You got it behind you, David, on your the one screen back there, the flag, and the aim, because we wore Ames that night. Ames kind of became a big thing. So
yeah, I liked it in a wrestling match too against Iowa. That was really, really nice. Yeah.
So David, here's what Marcus. One of you send me your address, Marcus.
Okay.
And you know what? A legend like you ought to get a little care package from me.
I appreciate that.
All right.
I appreciate that.
Let me see what I can come up with. And if I can't pull it off before Christmas because the equipment guys are a little buried with the bowl prep, we'll come up with something. So what do you like? You like double XL?
Oh, I wasn't double XL when I was playing. I was in double XL 100 pounds ago.
I don't know if
you're gonna have to go to the football equipment room for me. But hey, with football being my favorite sport, hey, anything 4 or 5X. It's getting a little cold out here, so I get to bundle up.
Okay.
Is there a chance we'll see those uniforms again, Jamie?
Oh, what we wore for the 100th of Jack Trice?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think so. I think that was a one-off for the. And I say that, and then Matt will come up with something. I let Matt decide his uniforms, but I haven't heard them wanting to wear that again. I think that was for that particular moment. And, I think there'll be another time we'll have another commemorative game in the future. It's not something we think we want to do on an annual basis. There's other things we can do on an annual basis to make sure we, carry on the great message that Jack Trice stood for, and he stood for a lot more than, a jersey. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so we didn't want to make it just about the jersey. It needs to be, a lot more long lasting about just how we do things in life and our character and our meaning. But it's still fun to have a time like we did where you get all eyes on it. And that was really neat to have that event.
Yeah, we were wondering, a lot of Twitter, the Twitterverse sort of blew up, wondering if that might be an annual one single game type of affair where you could recognize Jack Trice and what he stood for and make that an annual event.
Yeah, I think there's just a little fear that you don't want to water it down so much that people start to take it for granted, and then it doesn't become, it was a really neat deal that got a lot of attention. And I think there's just this a little bit afraid of, let's not just have it become something ordinary. There's some things we need to do as a society and as a university and as an athletics department to carry on his legacy. And those are the things I want us to be focused on. But every so often, you got to give it a little pop and a little energy too.
Well, that was certainly the case this year. Jamie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on tonight's show.
Thank you.
Everyone. We want to again thank Gravitate Co-working and Revelton Distillery for your sponsorship of this program. That's been another edition of In the Side of the Storm. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.